नमस्कार दोस्तों, हर संडे की तरह आज भी आपके साथ जुड़ चुका हूं। पिछले संडे मैंने एक वीडियो आपके साथ रखा था, जो 2 अगस्त 2024 का जो सर्कुलर है बीडीडीआर के बारे में। उसके बारे में मुझे जो लगता था वो मैंने आपसे कहा था। मुझे ये मालूम था कि ये सर्कुलर इतना आसान नहीं है इंटरप्रेट करना, और उसके इंटरप्रिटेशन में बहुत सारा स्कोप है। And I had assured that we'll be talking to Dhananjay Gokhale, who is a chartered accountant by profession, and he is in the industry for the last 20 years or so. Apart from audit practice, he is also one of the visiting faculty to the College of Supervision of Reserve Bank of India. He is a regular speaker at various seminars, as well as an invitee, a guest faculty to the seminars which are conducted by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Now, I had requested him to spare some time for the benefit of all urban cooperative banks, with the intention that this BDDR kind of circular, whatever that we may read or interpret, what is his expert view? So, we have been interpreting, and I have received quite a few questions on the 19th Jan circular, which was on the same video, and we would like to put it up immediately this Sunday, probably on the 26th Jan. We'll be putting up this video so that there is a linkage and the clarity will be quicker. Uh, दोस्तों, आप सब ये चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करते हैं, आपको वीडियोस अच्छे लगते हैं, और मैंने आपको प्रॉमिस किया था कि we'll be having several experts from the industry to talk to you. Mr. Gokhale is one of those experts who will be sharing his views and helping us in managing our banks in a better way. आप जानते ही हैं कि ये चैनल का पर्पस ही ये है कि वी शुड ऑल बी ए कंप्लायंट बैंक, वी शुड नॉट मेक मिस्टेक्स इन दी circulars which are issued by the Reserve Bank of India. It is with this intention this meeting has been organized with Mr. Dhananjay Gokhale. My request is that even after the end of this video, अगर आपको कोई सवाल है, if you have any queries, you can send the same to me on the email which is given in the description. At the end of the description of this video, those queries would be escalated to Mr. Gokhale for an appropriate response. In the meantime, after his session is over, there are a couple of questions which I have received. We'll be asking him to give his view on those questions so that all of you would be benefited immensely. Dhananjay ji, कैसे हैं आप? How are you, sir?
Yeah, fine. And thank you for inviting me over here.
Thank you. So, as discussed earlier, this one particular circular of 2nd August 2024 has been causing uh, a lot of confusion amongst the urban cooperative banking fraternity. I would request you to do an opening talk on this circular, and then you can proceed further with the step-by-step explanation, including the accounting entries that the industry would seek from you, and then they would like to understand it thoroughly so that while closing the books on 31st of March 2025, they do not commit any errors. Or if at all they commit the errors, these errors would be or should be committed in consultation with Reserve Bank of India. That is the intention. So the floor is yours, Mr. Dhananjay. You can please start your proceedings. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So I will first, give a brief background about why the circular has got issued and what was the real trigger point probably was there behind the circular. Now, as you know, it's already stated in the circular, the main intention is that there were certain banks who had created BDDR below the line instead of typically, expectation that BDDR is a kind of a provision which should be always created above the line. Now, when I say that, let me just quickly talk about what is below the line and above the line so that, that part will be very clear. See, typically when we talk about below the line, it's always profit appropriation or what you call it as nafa watni, or you make profit distributed among certain stakeholders, or you retain that profit in the form of various funds. When I talk about above the line, it typically will constitute about, the items which are related to expenses, provisions, or estimated provisions, I should say, or at times prudential provision like standard asset provision. So all these things are charged on profit and loss account, wherein those are required to be debited to the profit and loss account above the line. Now, coming back to the point about BDDR, even though the word BDDR contains the word as reserves, It's technically a provision for bad and doubtful debts, to put it in simple terms. The moment we call it as a provision, it amounts or it amounts to a expense related item and not related to a fund distribution or a profit distribution item. So what was ideally expected was that anything which is in the nature of charge on profit and loss account, which in fact is specified in IRAC circular also since years, it should have been always debited above the line, and below the line, in case if anyone wants to create a provision for bad and doubtful debt, it should have been created in the form of a fund actually, and not in the form of provision for bad and doubtful debt. So probably RBI has come across several instances wherein there were multiple combinations which are made related to this below the line, above the line BDDR. And this circular is a kind of a one-time opportunity to iron out all those earlier mistake, aberrations, or whatever you call it, and to come out clean after March 2025 balance sheet. So that's the attempt from RBI side to ensure that all banks are at same page, and there's a specified treatment which is specified in the circular. Now, as far as applicability of the circular is concerned, it will apply only to those banks who have BDDR in their books of accounts, which is created below the line. So if a bank is not having any BDDR provision, which is created below the line, practically this circular will not apply. So those banks won't even have to pass any accounting entry related to that. Secondly, by whatever accounting treatment which has been given by the bank in the past, that is up to March 2024, by taking a stray example, if someone has created BTDR below the line, but it is already utilized and extinguished. So as on March 2024, if there is no BDDR component which is related to the BDDR created below the line, still that circular will not apply. So as a first step, a bank has to measure as to whether the circular applies to me or not. So the simple litmus test is that out of your total BDDR, verify that what is the quantum of BDDR remaining which you have created below the line. If your bank is compliant that everything is above the line, circular doesn't apply to you. If your bank was non-compliant, but below the line BDDR is already utilized by whatever accounting entries are passed, still that circular will not apply. So first step is identification of BDDR into two parts.
This, just to interrupt you, this below the
Yeah,
line means the BDDR created out of appropriation. So,
exactly.
will you please elaborate on what is above the line and below the line, and then you can proceed further?
Yeah. So let's take an example, like suppose you have a BDDR provision requirement as per IRAC norms of say 100 rupees. A bank might have created that entire 100 rupees provision above the line. That is, it is already reduced while you calculate the net profit of the bank. So that is above the line. A bank might create additional provision below the line, may to, kind of a cushion for reducing the net NPAs, which bank might have done below the line. So below the line means suppose a bank is having say 10 crores of net profit. Against that, say 5 crores of BTDR is already provided above the line. And in addition to that, maybe bank wants to create additional 2 crores below the line, but that will be by way of appropriation. So the bank net profit is not impacted because of that. So the intent might be, for any other purpose. So ideally, even though I say that required BDDR or any BDDR should be always above the line, there were aberrations which were created by, many accounting entries in the banks. So this circular, as I said, is a kind of attempt to kind of clean off those aberrations and have a new accounting practice followed henceforth. So
Okay,
that's the above the line, below the line.
okay.
Yeah. Then coming to the second para, which is interesting, there is a reference of accounting standard 5 which has been made. Now,
Yeah.
as far as accounting standard 5 is concerned, it talks about when that expense should be recognized and the period related to that. Now, as far as accounting standards are concerned, all accounting standards were mandatory since long. So there is nothing new in applicability of accounting standard. Now, what RBI wants to highlight over here probably is that it is only highlighting that as per accounting standard 5, a bank was not supposed to create any BDDR below the line, and it was always supposed to have BDDR as a charge on profit. So it's only a reference point which is wrong, and there is nothing new in that. So it's not that accounting standard 5 is now made mandatory or there is any change in accounting standard 5. Accounting standard 5 was there very much, since initiation stage. And as of today, if you talk about that, it's only a reference to highlight the point that there is a rectification which is required related to the aberrations related to BDDR created below the line. Now, coming to the third paragraph. Now, the third paragraph is talking about how to give those effects wherein BDDR is below the line. So that's a kind of a process which RBI has defined. Now, if we go step by step, first thing that is paragraph 3, subpara A, it talks about the treatment which the bank has to give subsequently. Now, what RBI specified is that from the current financial year, that is 24-25, no bank will create any type of BDDR below the line. So whether it is additional BDDR, floating BDDR, or excessive BDDR or required BDDR, whatever the nature of BDDR is, that is something which henceforth cannot be created below the line. So that is the first thing which RBI has highlighted now. Second thing is that RBI has given a kind of a leverage only to those banks wherein the applicable state statute might be providing for certain type of BDDR which the banks are required to create below the line. So there are two things which are vital over here. First thing is that bank has to verify that the applicable statute, that is typically suppose you are in a particular state, a single state bank, that state's cooperative act, if it specifies that additional BDDR is required to be created in addition to RBI's required BDDR, then only this proviso will apply. That is part B. But there is a second condition also. The statute had to specifically specify that it has to be created below the line. So there might be a hypothetical case wherein statute is silent on that. If the statute is silent actually, then it's a ticklish thing as to whether it can be created below the line or not, because the statute had to categorically say that it has to be out of profit appropriation. If the statute is not saying that, it means that statute requires an additional cushion to be created by the bank, and that cushion, once we say that, it is a provision. So it's not a fund appropriation. So that is part B. But that will apply only in certain banks and not in all the banks. So just to give an example, if a bank is a multi-state cooperative bank, so multi-state cooperative act doesn't have this kind of a provision. So clause B will not apply. Or just to give an example, if we talk about Maharashtra State Cooperative Act doesn't provide for any specific BDDR creation. So even for banks which are single state bank in Maharashtra, this clause B will not apply. But maybe in certain state that clause might get applicable only if there is a provision, and that too a specific provision to have it below the line, kind of item. So that is paragraph B. Now from paragraph C actually, the remedial measures are given by Reserve Bank of India. So we'll go one by one. Now the opening remark in para C itself categorically specify that it is a facilitation for rectification. So one has to first understand that there was an error which was committed earlier. There is nothing new which RBI is now pronouncing. So RBI is only giving a facility to rectify the errors which are committed earlier. And that is very vital actually, because there is no change in regulatory norms per se which RBI has done. So the intention of RBI is to facilitate rectification and not to bring in something new. So it is an old provision which is continued. So that is very vital. Now if you come to subclause 1, the subclause 1 is a kind of a step 1. Now in step 1, what RBI is specifying is, first you identify out of your total BDDR which is appearing in your balance sheet of March 2024, what is the quantum of BDDR which is created below the line. So we'll just take a hypothetical example. Suppose you have 100 rupees as BDDR, total BDDR, out of which 20 were created below the line. Now in that case, that 20 rupees component that you need to classify or quantify as BDDR 2024. So that is the first step in clause 1, that is clause Roman 1. Once you quantify that BDDR 2024, then you have to go to paragraph 2, that is Roman 2. In Roman 2, what RBI is prescribed is, to the extent of BDDR 2024, you have to debit to your P&L appropriation account, that is below the line, and create an additional BDDR provision equivalent to BDDR 2024. Now, this amount, it means that taking the same example, so 20 rupees will be debited to P&L appropriation account. So my total BDDR now will be 100 plus 20, out of which...
Please repeat what you have stated just now.
Yeah. So I will again
It's
repeat.
very significant.
So in first step, I have identified BDDR 2024. So now out of my total BDDR of 100, I am now bifurcating that into two parts. One is BDDR 80 rupees, which is above the line created BDDR. 20 rupees is below the line created BDDR, which is now called as BDDR 2024. So that is the first step. Now, to the extent of BDDR 2024 amount, I need to create a BDDR below the line. Now, we need to remember one thing, the words used are BDDR, that is provision. So, I will make 20 rupees provision of BDDR below the line to the extent of 2024, that is BDDR 2024. So, P&L appropriation account will be debited, credit will go to BDDR. So, that is my second step. Now, there is a remedy also which is given that it can be created out of general reserve also. So, just to put it in simple terms, I can utilize my general reserve to the extent of that 20 rupees debit which is appearing in P&L appropriation account. So, that is a one-time measure. So, those banks which are having general reserves with them, they can use that to the extent of this 20 rupees debit which is there in P&L appropriation account. So, that is the second step. So, now after second step, I am having my 80 rupees which was the original BDDR plus this 20 rupees of BDDR created. So, that is 100. Plus I am having 20 rupees as BDDR 2024. So that is completion of step 2. Now when we go to step 3, which is provided, what RBI specified is that to the extent of balance of BDDR, which is not required as per the applicable statute, I can transfer that either to general reserve or to balance in P&L account below the line. Now what does this mean? So let's take hypothetical case now. So again, I will reiterate that what are the balances available with me. So I am having BDDR of 80 plus 20, that is 100 rupees, and I am having BDDR 2024 as 20. So that is my position after step 2. Now let's take two hypothetical examples wherein BDDR required is say 90 rupees. Now when I say as per applicable statute, that will also include as per RBI circular also, because that is something which is surplus with me. Now let's presume that required BDDR is 90 rupees. So now surplus available with me is 10 rupees. So to the extent of 10 rupees, I can reverse below the line. But suppose I am having required provision of 70 rupees only. So my surplus is 30 rupees. Now that 30 rupees, if I go by plain reading, I can reverse 30 rupees below the line, which according to me shouldn't be done. I need to restrict myself only to reversal of 20 rupees as below the line and 10 rupees I should reverse above the line, because that is out of my core 80 rupees BDDR provision which are created above the line. So I shouldn't, use that 30 rupees entirely to reverse below the line. I should reverse 10 rupees above the line and 20 rupees below the line. Now here, what is very vital is RBI has used word can also be transferred. So it is not should. So there is an option available
Not
with me
compulsory.
that I may not reverse it. I
May
can
not
continue
reverse
that.
it. Right.
I
Right.
may not reverse it.
Right.
Now, that opens a different kind of interpretation in subsequent years. So let's have a look at that also. So let's presume 2025 is over. I have retained that 100 rupees entirely without reversing. Now, in the
Okay.
next year, let's presume that I am having a requirement of only 70 rupees. Now, that 70 rupees requirement which I am having, so I am entitled to reverse this 30 rupees. Out of which 20 rupees I had created below the line because of this special treatment, and 10 rupees I had created above the line. But the inference which one can draw is, if you are reversing in March 2025, you should reverse it below the line, and otherwise, the regular prudence of reversing it above the line should continue. But that is something which is, left to the judgment of the banks also and to the statutory auditors and RBI also, because there is nothing specified about what will happen after 2025. So maybe next year, that will be a different thing, but that is just, an item which I wanted to highlight. Now let's come to para 4, which is more interesting. Now in para 4, what is stated is, after passing the above entries, the balance in BDDR can be reckoned for Tier 1 capital, and the balance in BDDR shall not be reduced from gross NPA and net NPAs. Now here, I have a very small, kind of interpretation, I should say, a kind of different interpretation, that the word BDDR used in this para 4 should be read as BDDR 2024. The
Right.
reason being, I cannot have my BDDR taken for Tier 1 and not using it for net NPA, because the very purpose of BDDR itself is to reduce my gross NPAs and net NPAs wherever it is required. So I will interpret it in a little different way. I will interpret it by saying that the balance of BDDR 2024, I can use it for Tier 1, And the reason is only simple. By step 2, actually, I'm creating a kind of a charge on below the line profit appropriation and making that additional BDDR at par with my routine BDDR. So my BDDR 2024 becomes a kind of a free reserve because now the utility of BDDR 2024 is no more there. So
Yeah.
that I can use it for tier 1 as a kind of a permanent thing. And naturally, there is no question that I can use that BDDR 2024 as netting of component for net NPA and gross NPA. So that is a kind of a free reserve, which is, which is a kind of a permanent nature, which will have a nomenclature as BDDR 2024, but it will be a free reserve, which I cannot use it for reduction of net NPAs or gross NPAs. So that's a
Okay.
slight thing which I will always, like to interpret in a little different way, because otherwise that meaning will not be proper actually to use BDDR for tier 1. So
That's thank.
that's how,
Nah,
it has to be interpreted according to
yeah.
me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There are a couple of questions which I am having
Sure.
because of several discussions.
Yeah.
सर इसमें ऐसा है कि ये जो बीटीडीआर को सीआरआर कंप्यूट करने के लिए पकड़ना है उसका जो उसके लिए जो कैपिटल एडिक्वेसी का गाइडलाइंस है उसमें कुछ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस है कुछ 1.25% समथिंग लाइक दैट मुझे जो याद आ रहा है
Yeah.
वो तो इसके
Yeah.
लिए भी वो अप्लीकेबल होगा वैसे आई मीन हाउ डू यू रिस्पॉन्ड टू दैट
Yeah. Actually, that BDDR, which so now we have only two items in balance sheet. One is BDDR, one is BDDR 2024. So BDDR 2024 will become part of tier 1. So no question of tier 2 related that 1.25 percentage and all these things, because that is now free reserves for me. The real BDDR which we are talking about, which I can use it either to reduce my net NPS or I can use it for tier 2 capital requirement subject to that 1.25%
नॉट
norm.
बोथ नॉट बोथ
Not both. So that norm will continue. And in fact, RBI somewhere in the footnote also has made it very clear about CRR computation. So
या
BDDR usage will remain same. It is not undergoing any change because of this circular.
Dhananjay ji, thank you so much. There are a couple of questions I would like you to respond because people keep on asking us
Yeah,
the
sure,
questions and would definitely
sure.
would like you to take a response on that. Of
Yeah,
course, I will not take the names of the people who are asking these questions because these questions are in general applicable to almost entire industry.
yeah,
एक हमारे दोस्त है वो ये पूछते हैं कि our bank has created technology development fund from profit appropriation account as per the clause of our bylaws. So, in his opinion, this is a specific reserve technology fund. Uh, the question is also not related to BDDR, but the question is uh, whether this fund is eligible for being an item of tier 1 or tier 2 capital, or it is not eligible by any other law. The technology fund.
yeah.
Now, it is
See
created out of
this.
appropriation, not by
Yeah,
way of a charge on P&L.
yeah. My personal view is that any provision which is made against unknown, expenses, that should be called as a fund. So let's, take an example. Let's take a couple of examples. One is technology fund. Other similar fund might be say building reserve fund. Now these funds are created only to, I should say that kind of give a disclosure about what is the intent of usage of profit in future and nothing beyond that. So it's not mandatory that I need to always use my technology fund within a specific time frame. I may not have any intention also, but I can create any type of fund. Like suppose if I create a building reserve fund, there is no necessity that I need to purchase or procure a particular immovable property. Same way for technology fund also, there is nothing like a mandate which board or even the shareholders are giving that technology will be upgraded. Now, having said that, I will always say that it is a free reserve. Only thing is that I have given a nomenclature on that, provided the bank follows a prudent practice that wherever technology upgradation takes place, depending
I'll
upon
use
whether it
it.
is a revenue expenditure or a capital expenditure, appropriate accounting treatment is given and fund is not directly utilized because that is very vital. And that is something which is prohibitive also. You cannot directly use fund for capital expenditure or a revenue expenditure. And what I will suggest is that is something the bank should disclose in accounting policies by saying that it is only a buffer created below the line and the intention is not to use the fund directly.
सर द कॉरोलरी क्वेश्चन इज, ये जो आईटी का फंड किया हुआ है उसको हम टेक्नोलॉजी रिप्लेसमेंट के लिए यूज कर सकते हैं या नहीं कर सकते हैं, या फिर इसके लिए भी रिजर्व बैंक का परमिशन, प्रायर अप्रूवल लेना पड़ेगा? दैट इज द सेकंड
Yeah.
क्वेश्चन दैट
If
ही इज आस्किंग.
Yeah. So if you want to reverse the fund below the line, you need to approach to RBI. If you want to simply continue the fund, naturally, there is not a, question to go to RBI. Now, your first question about can we use that fund? Now, I will just put it in a different way. See, when we create a fund, typically, I need to create asset equivalent to that. So suppose I am not utilizing a fund. Ideally, I need to earmark my securities by saying that this is the component of my investment or surplus funds which is kept kind of marked or earmarked for the for a particular utilization. Now, once I say that, suppose I am having a technology fund of 10 crores, out of my investment, 10 crores I will just earmark by saying that this investment I will liquidate only when I require that utilization. So from fund flow point of view or cash flow point of view, I can use those investments for usage towards the technology. So that's the
सर
way I will
इसलिए कि
utilize the fund.
तो आपका कहना ये है कि ये टेक्नोलॉजी फंड को डेबिट डाल के वेंडर को पैसा दे सकते हैं क्या?
No, I am saying that use those investment funds. So liquidate your assets, use that, but accounting wise, debit will go to either P&L account or fixed asset, depending upon type of expenditure which is incurred.
Again, prior approval is necessary because this is again a fund created, no?
No, I am keeping my fund intact. I am not touching my fund from
ओके
accounting
ओके
perspective.
ओके ओके.
Yeah.
तो वेंडर को पेमेंट कर सकते हैं और वो पेमेंट होने के बाद में पीएनडीएल का इम्पैक्ट कम करने के लिए आप ये
Either
फंड में से
P&L or
अप्रोप्रिएशन
fixed
कर
asset.
सकते हैं.
Yeah, it will depend upon capex expenditure or revenue expenditure.
ओके. और एक सवाल सर ऐसा है कि वो कंसेप्ट ऑफ अबव द लाइन और बिलो द लाइन, उसके लिए वो ये कहते हैं, उनका ये कहना है कि क्वेश्चन इज दो अवर एनपीए वेंट बिलो लास्ट ईयर, शुड वी रिक्वायर टू डू एनपीए प्रोविजन अबव द लाइन फॉर द करंट ईयर स्लिपेज? एनपीए यानी मेरा जो इंटरप्रिटेशन ऐसे कि इनके पास बीडीडीआर पड़ा हुआ है और स्टिल डू शुड दे क्रिएट द करंट ईयर प्रोविजंस बाय डेबिटिंग पीएनडीएल? बीडीडीआर सरप्लस है ना,
Yeah.
बीडीडीआर सरप्लस है, एनपीएस स्लिपेज आ गया, उसके ऊपर रिक्वायर्ड प्रोविजन आ गया, फिर भी पीएनडीएल को डेबिट डालना है क्या? दैट इज अ क्वेश्चन.
Okay, so this is apart from this circular, I presume. So there is nothing related to below the
This
line
is a
in this
generic
question.
question.
Yeah, so in generic question, see, typically, even if you have sufficient BDDR to cushion even your current year additional NPAs, many a times the bank might debit to P&L account and create BDDR to take tax benefit. So it's not out of compulsion. It is, out of option actually, which the bank can opt for. So it is more of a tax planning actually. So it's bank's prerogative or bank's choice whether to create additional BDDR provision above the line or not. Usually, it will depend upon the tax planning perspective from the bank side. But it is very much permitted. In fact, there are many banks which are having more than 100% of BDDR as compared to gross NPS. So usually in these banks, BDDR continues to get provided only to take benefit of tax and nothing else.
सर हमारे पास समय ज्यादा नहीं है, 5-7 मिनट
Yeah,
लगता है मुझे है. तो उसमें एक एक दो सवाल, छोटे सवाल. एक तो सवाल
sure.
ऐसा है कि ये टैक्स इम्प्लीकेशंस में कोई डिफरेंस हो सकता है क्या, ये जो सर्कुलर आया है उसकी वजह से?
Yeah.
और एक सवाल ऐसा है कि बिलो द लाइन प्रीवियसली जो किया था बीडीडीआर हमने, तो उसको तो अभी ट्रांसफर करना पड़ेगा बीडीडीआर में, बराबर है? उसको बाद में 1 April को वापस रिट्रांसफर कर सकते हैं क्या जनरल रिजर्व को?
No. See, okay, I will just answer both the questions.
या.
So first thing is that as far as tax applicability is concerned, that will never undergo any change because as far as tax provisions are concerned, it was always necessary that BDDR should have been created above the line to take the tax benefit. So that is first thing. So anything which is created below the line, even by this paragraph 3 also, according to me, we should not venture into taking a tax benefit out of that because charge on profit is something which is essential as far as the tax provisions are concerned. So that is point number one. Second point is that after March 2025, there is no question of reversal of anything, except to the extent, as I said, that Roman 3 para, that is 3.3, there is no clarity about how it will happen after 2025. So what I feel is that one has to apply prudence in that. So whatever was created above the line, it's fine to reverse that above the line. Whatever is created below the line, only to that extent you can reverse below the line. But again, there is a hitch in that. It's better to approach RBI if you want to hit anything below the line. Because there is one more, corollary which one has to keep in mind, that whatever was created above the line, one should not reverse it below the line also. As we talk about, the other way around, that whatever I'm creating below the line, I should not reverse is above the line. So it's exactly opposite to that. So ideally, you need to maintain a status quo that whatever is created above the line should be reversed above the line. Whatever is created below the line, only that can be reversed below the line. Of course, subject to RBI permission.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you so much, Dhananjay ji. We will keep on bothering you on couple of other topics also. For example,
Yeah.
अब जो परसों एक नया सर्कुलर आया है, दिस इज रिगार्डिंग फ्रॉड प्रिवेंशन।
Yeah.
अभी रिसेंटली 17 तारीख को सर्कुलर आया, उसके ऊपर भी
Yeah.
हम आपसे मार्गदर्शन लेना चाहेंगे।
Yeah.
दोस्तों, आपको ये वीडियो अगर अच्छा लगा तो लाइक कीजिएगा, सब्सक्राइब कीजिएगा, शेयर कीजिएगा। आपके लाइक्स बहुत कम आते हैं, तो लाइक के लिए एक रिक्वेस्ट रहेगी, शेयर कीजिएगा, दोस्तों में शेयर कीजिएगा, सबको बताइएगा। और इसमें ईमेल दिया हुआ है, मेरा खुद का पर्सनल ईमेल आईडी दिया हुआ है, जिसके ऊपर आप जो भी आपको सवाल है वो पूछ सकते हो। उसका हम आइदर मेल से और अदरवाइज आपको जवाब दे सकते हैं, या फिर धनंजय जी अगली बार जब आएंगे उनको ये सवाल उनसे पूछ सकते हैं।
Sure.
सो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग दिस वीडियो। थैंक यू वेरी मच। थैंक यू धनंजय जी।
Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच।
Thank you.
नमस्कार।
Thank you. Thank you so much.